you could sit in the open area here behind the council. And I guess there is a few here on the other side. Okay, I'm showing at 6 p.m. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the meeting tonight. If you would join us in the pledge and a prayer.
Heavenly Father, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to meet together tonight, Lord. And we're just reminded of the great sacrifice that you made for us this weekend as we celebrate Holy Thursday. Please be with each one of us. Guide and direct our steps this evening and our words, Lord. We thank you so much for the opportunity to be leaders in this community, in this situation. And we just pray that you would help us to do the best job ever, Lord. Give us wisdom and guidance. Direct our words, direct our steps, and direct this meeting. Thank you so much. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Okay, before we get started, there's a few announcements I'd like to make. Please turn your cell phones off or silence them. When you come up to speak, please speak clearly into our microphones. Sometimes it's hard to hear. The presentations by the city, please try to stay on time as much as possible. Public comment period, when it's time for that, we will call you up and you will have 2 minutes. Kathy will be the timekeeper and she will hold something up at the 30-second remaining mark. So, Mr. Mayor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President Long, County Council. Appreciate the opportunity to spend a little time together tonight. I'll get right at it. The Warsaw Airport has been operated by the City Aviation Board for 76 years. A $61,000 investment by the board in 1947 was recently estimated to be worth somewhere north of $100 million replacement cost. The Warsaw Airport has evolved into a critical economic development asset for our entire county. It is a gateway to global markets for our manufacturing community. So the question is, why are we standing here tonight ready to relinquish partial control of this powerful economic development asset by proposing that together we establish an airport authority? Kosciuszko County has a great story to tell. We are the envy of almost every county in the state of Indiana. We have lakes. We have an abundance of productive farm ground. We have good balance of population and quality of life. And we are abundantly blessed with a legacy of high-tech manufacturing that goes back to the turn of the century. Not the last turn of the century, but the one before that. And our manufacturing industry continues to grow and expand. Our manufacturing partners create opportunity for every person in this county with skilled, high-paying jobs and sustainable career paths. And for every direct manufacturing job, an additional 1.42 jobs are created that supports the industry and workforce needs. Jobs in healthcare, retail, education, utilities, banking, and others. 7 of the top 10 paying taxpayers in Kosciuszko County are orthopedic manufacturers. Additionally, 5 of the top 25 county taxpayers are agricultural businesses. In summary, 38 of the 40 highest taxpayers are manufacturers or represent the spin-off jobs previously referenced. Now, I don't think there's one person in this room that enjoys paying taxes. I know I don't. But for the benefit of our local taxpayers, most counties don't enjoy the broad economic base that we are blessed with, all from the investment that industry makes in Kosciuszko County. Our industry partners have blessed the community with hundreds of millions of dollars of investment that has a strong beneficial impact on our tax rate. In just a minute, Nick King, our airport manager, and other community partners will talk about the robust economic impact and tax advantages our airport and manufacturers have created in Kosciuszko County. Also, in a few minutes, you'll hear from Representative Craig Snow about the importance Indiana economic development places on industry in Kosciuszko County. Yesterday, I spoke with Senator Todd Young, State Director. He reminded me of the FAA funding opportunities their office has assisted us with in the past, and how our county and community needs to be prepared to seize the new funding opportunities the reauthorization will present. We are stronger together. The local partnerships our airport has with industry create a synergy that drives our local economy and opens many more doors when we work together. Those partnerships are inseparable and will only strengthen with your support of this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you all for coming out. Thank you for those who are coming to speak on either side and make your opinions heard. This is why one of the great reasons that we love living in this country is that we can have these discussions. So tonight, as I go through and I talk about the airport authority, let me making sure my technology works. There we go. These are some of the questions that we are hoping or these are some of the topics that we are hoping to talk about at this evening's meeting. What does this airport bring to our community? What is the economic impact? Who are the users at the airport? And we're going to talk about some of that diverse user base. What are some of the infrastructure replacement projects that we have going on in the next couple years? And what are some that we have recently done in the past few years as well as other improvements to the airfield that are not necessarily pavement. Hangar and terminal construction has been something that's been talked about a lot, so we'll touch on that, and then some equipment upgrades at the end. So, economic impact is something that is the biggest driving factor behind an airport. Currently, we support about 117 jobs out at Warsaw Airport, and our labor income, as you can see, is over $6.8 million. Our GDP for the airport is just over $12 million, and we as an airport have a direct output of $23 million. That number is brought to us by the NDOT Department of Aviation, who did an economic impact study back in 2022. Hold on one second. Loading right. Just reloaded it. So this is that study that I was referencing. It's the Indiana State Aviation Economic Impact Study that was done by NDOT Aviation. The other study that I referenced was done back in 2012, and this was a comprehensive economic impact study that did not just look at the gross domestic product that the employees at the airport put through, but what does all of manufacturing and business, and not just manufacturing, farming and the rest, have out at the Warsaw Airport. As you can see, I just picked a handful of airports from the state, and these studies are available to the public if you would like to read these. Council, I've given you copies of this in the past, but I put up a few airports for consideration. So Fort Wayne International, for example, brings in just shy of $1 billion to their community every year because they exist. Obviously, they're an air carrier airport. They have passengers. They are a large economic driver. Columbus, Indiana, with Cummins or with Caterpillar down there, has a huge economic impact to their community of over $650 million. And then a small town, similar to a Warsaw, Huntington has about a $19.5 million economic impact to their community. Indy Exec is the executive airport on the north side of Indy, and it supports a lot of the business growth in the Carmel and Fishers area. They have approximately a $430 million annual economic impact. And why do we talk about 4 other airports? It's to show Warsaw is actually in the top 5. We have just shy of an $860 million a year economic impact to this community because our airport is here and operating. So who are some of those users and how is our airport used? I'm not going to go through and read the list. You guys can see a lot of those, but the big users are some of the biomedicals, your Zimmer Biomet, DePuy Synthes. Imager Charter Company is a charter company that offers charter flights not just out of Warsaw, but they are called all over the United States to pick up passengers and fly them where they need to go. Polk Equipment Group. PWI is one of our newer corporate tenants. They just started or had a land lease signed with us here 6 or 8 months ago and are currently flying out to meet with customers. And when they're doing a specific custom job, they'll actually fly engineers into some of these other businesses, and it's easier for them to get to and from these places that are not in our direct 1 to 2 hour driving area. The aircraft allows that to happen. Airport users that are not based at Warsaw, but use our airport frequently are Choretime Brock, NetJets, Executive Jet Company, Purdue. Those are both corporate or air charter companies similar to Imager. Purdue University, Western Michigan University have students that fly in on cross countries and use our services here at Warsaw. In fact, I think one of our city council reps' grandson has flown in a couple times to see her. We do have the GA Aviation, and I see some of my fellow pilots out there as well. Got to give a shout out to the weekend warriors that go out and fly into. We have people that will fly into Warsaw just to go visit some of our local restaurants on Friday night or Saturday morning to get breakfast. And then Louis Dreyfus and the Crop Dusters. We can't forget about those because they are a big user. In fact, I took these photos here just a couple days ago. This top photo on the left, we had our first, it wasn't even April yet, and we had our first ag flights of the year. We had 14 flights on that day. They were out planting some spring crops. The lower left, that Cirrus that flew in, Louis Dreyfus had a grinder that went down, and one of their production lines was actually stalled because they were missing that part. And the company that manufactures that part is based in Wisconsin. They put the part on the aircraft, flew it down here, and then they jumped in one of our courtesy cars, went down to Louis Dreyfus, installed that part, and they had it up and running about 3.5, 4 hours after they received that phone call. The bottom right aircraft right there, that one was actually taken just this morning. That jet showed up. It's a company out of Wisconsin, and they picked up 9 of our local manufacturing professionals and flew them up to their headquarters in Wisconsin. In fact, I think they're due back in about 5 or 10 minutes if they didn't land right at 6. And that jet flew in, picked them up, took them back so that they can show them what some of their vacuum form line products can do. And that's one of the industries that we support. And then the top one, it's a single engine, 5-person, 6-person jet that flew in for the Grace College basketball tournament here a few weeks back. And that's actually, they were here doing some marketing with a company here, and so they just flew in for that. And we touch a lot of different businesses outside of the biomedicals. Some of our recent projects that we have worked on, our north-south runway was replaced in 2019. We had originally budgeted to have to pay our 5% share of that. But working with our consulting firm, we were able to actually find additional grant funding, and we were able to get that project funded at a 100% FAA funded grant. Power line project is one that everybody has talked about for a very long time. That project is going to be right around 7.6 million. Currently, the FAA is paying for 90% of that. The state is paying for 5%. And then the airport, using fuel money that we have made through fuel sales, is paying for the other 5% of that. Some of our hangar improvements, as you can see, we just put a new roof on our T hangars. Our T hangars house 8 aircraft, and we make money on rent and fuel sales from those hangars and those aircraft. That building has been there since the 60s, and I think this was the second roof that has been on that building. So just ongoing update. We had a new door put on one of our main corporate hangars a few years back for one of our larger manufacturing companies. And then we've been doing a lot of taxiway repair. We're going to talk in a minute here about some of the asphalt issues that are creeping up that we are going to be tackling over the next couple of years. So other infrastructure projects that are right down the pipeline, a couple years out is our runway 927. That's the east-west runway. We're guessing that that runway is going to cost right around $7 million. And do remember, most of these projects that I'm talking about are 90-10 or 95-5, 90% from the FAA, 5% from state, 5% from us. We're looking at reconstructing all of our taxi lanes and taxiways at the airport. Roadway diversion or a tunnel for 100 East. That project is a few years out, and we need to start planning for that. And that's one of the main reasons that we would like to start partnering with the county now so that you guys can have a voice in that project as we move forward. We would like to build some new corporate T hangars. I've been approached by a few different organizations that would like to base their aircraft at Warsaw, but we are currently at capacity. We have 64 hangars out at the airport. We currently have 67 aircraft based at the airport. Those corporate box hangars are typically a solely owned hangar. We will have one tenant. You can build some that you can have a shared use where multiple tenants can be in one hangar, but the few companies that have talked to me would like their own private hangar. So those are some projects we are working on. And the new T hangars is something else we would also like to do. I have a waiting list of 13 people currently waiting to get on into our airfield, and I would love to build a new row of T hangars to house those aircraft, to be making some rent and making some money on the fuel sales. And it's just one of those things, if we build it, they will come. Other projects a little bit further out, a new terminal and ramp is very much needed. Our ramp is, it is aging, and we are doing what we can to fix the cracks and crack seal and the rest, but you'll see here in a minute that just needs to be taken care of. And then the new terminal hangars, those are expensive, but those are where we house our largest corporate non-users. So the non-tenants, that aircraft that flew in this morning, if that aircraft would stay here, if they had brought 9 people instead of picking 9 people up, those aircraft will pay anywhere from $500 on the small side upwards of $1,200 to $1,500 per day just to keep those aircraft inside of the hangar. Once it's built, we can start billing for that to recoup some of that cost. And then we have some access roads at the airport that also need to be repaved. So what does our airport look like right now? So this is just a general overview of the pavement as it currently sits at the airport. As you see, our north-south runway has just been repaved, and it's rated at over 97% for the entire runway. The light green colors that you will see, and I know the numbers are a little bit harder to see, the rest of the airfield is anywhere from the 50 to 70%. The state comes out and grades all of our asphalt surfaces every 3 years. This was done last fall, and this has actually not been published yet. I called NDOT Director of Aviation, and he forwarded me this map just so we could use this for this presentation tonight. We do have some asphalt that is getting close to failure. As you will see, the dark yellow, orange, and red areas are asphalt structures that just need to be replaced. That may sound doom and gloom, but I would like to say that we were actually awarded Best Maintained Asphalt in the state back in 2020 by NDOT at our annual aviation conference. That award was given to us because we had the oldest asphalt of any airport in the state, and it was better maintained than some airports that had asphalt that was 20 and 30 years newer than us. If you take out the north-south runway that we just replaced back in 2020, the newest asphalt at our airport was put down in 1990. So it's 32, almost 33 years old. Some of our asphalt dates back to the early 80s. We've done everything that we can to maintain it, and we are continuing to do that. But there are going to be some major reconstruction projects coming up in the next couple of years. This is just a high-level design that myself and my engineers put together of what the future of the airport could potentially look like. What would that new terminal building potentially look like? Where would that ramp go? We are currently located on the north side of the hangar, or of the airport, and we would like to move that operation closer to the center of the airfield. It makes it a little bit more centralized for our traffic coming and going. You'll also, as I hit the mic, just going to point, these hangars in the back row, and I'll point it in the front for those sitting and facing that way, are some new hangars that we have on our airport layout plan. Those hangars there would be new construction to complement the ones that we already have. And then on this side of the airfield, we have some of our T hangars and smaller box hangars. As we talked about the infrastructure, the asphalt, the larger projects, we still have our ongoing annual maintenance costs as well. Replacing aging snow equipment and ground maintenance equipment. We maintain over 700 acres out at the airport, and so lawn mowing is a large part of that. We do cash rent some of our property outside of the fence. Unfortunately, new FAA restrictions make it so we can't cash rent inside the fence like we used to. I'm sure several of you remember driving by the airport. I know I do as a kid, seeing all of the corn or beans that were being farmed in the airport. The beans went first because if you go off the runway and your gear gets tangled in beans, your aircraft is much more likely to flip. And so the FAA got rid of us, allowing us to farm beans. So then we started farming corn. Well, that started bringing deer and other wildlife in. And so the FAA just kind of made a rule that said you're not supposed to have any kind of farming inside the fence. We are currently working on an environmental assessment study to look at what our wildlife hazard is. We currently have a 6-foot fence. As many of you in this room know, deer can jump easily over a 6-foot fence. And so is that a project that we're going to need to add in the future using some of those FAA funds? Aircraft-specific ground maintenance equipment, a GPU is a ground power unit. Some jets do not have batteries large enough to be able to start the engines or to have the electronics on for a long time so they can get their pre-flight planning done in the cockpit before that aircraft starts up to leave. A GPU allows an aircraft to be hooked up to the power grid, and then it can do some of those pre-flight planning checks. We currently don't have that, and we would need a new line of electricity brought into the terminal building to install a GPU because they typically take 400 amp 3-phase. A tug to be able to move aircraft around the ramp is something that we have recently just partnered with one of our local mechanics. Instead of us doing that as the FBO, the fixed base operator, we are using one of our mechanics, and he is offering that as a service to our customers. And our fuel trucks. I actually went back on last Friday and did the math, and our jet truck was purchased new in 1984 and has pumped over 42 million gallons of fuel in its service at the airport. So we do sell a lot of jet fuel out at the airport. Placing aging infrastructure, the tetrahedron is our main windsock. It is a lit windsock at the center of the field. And while a lot of people look at a windsock and say, how can that be $15,000? Ask any pilot or anybody who's ever worked in aviation, and you know that the second you see FAA approved, that's going to increase that cost exponentially. The rotating beacon is one that we actually just ordered. There was a sale at the end of last year. They had some surplus stock, and we were able to purchase one for about $1,500 less than that price listed there. And we're using some of our city electricians to help us get that installed. But that project right there, while it is a large upfront cost, that beacon costs me about $800 to $900 per month in electricity to have it on every single night because it is an old incandescent bulb style rotating beacon. Switching to a heated LED beacon, that heat will only be on if the temperatures are below 40 degrees to keep snow and ice from melting to it, but it's going to reduce our operating cost of that by over 90% month to month. Replacing our ILS, the ILS is our instrument landing system. Days like today, pilots can come in and land at Warsaw with no problems. But it's the adverse weather days when the clouds are very low and we have decreased visibility that we need things like an instrument landing system at Warsaw. We currently have one in place, and there are 3 parts that make up that instrument landing system. One of those has failed, and it is so obsolete we cannot get parts to repair it. So for us to replace that one portion of the three, we're looking at about $400,000 or about $1.2 million for the entire ILS. You can also ask some of my pilots. We had a part for our automated weather observation system, the AWOS, that went down about 6 months ago. And also, it is also obsolete. Luckily, aviation is a very tight-knit community. And a friend of a friend heard that we were missing a part and called me and said, hey, I have the same system as you. What's broken? I told him. He happened to have a spare, and instead of waiting for the company to make us a custom part, which was about a 10 to 12 month lead time, he overnighted it to us, and we were able to get our system up. And it still took us a few months to get everything fine-tuned and working again. But when our new one came in, we replaced the one at the other airport. So we were very thankful for that. So how is an airport funded? We sell fuel, we sell oil, we have land leases. Some of our hangars are privately owned, meaning the tenant owns the building, and then the airport owns the land, and then that tenant pays an annual land lease to the airport. We also own hangars at the airport that we rent out to customers and then receive either a monthly or yearly rent, depending on how their lease is written. We do farm out a few hundred acres at the airport, and we receive cash for that farm ground that is rented. And we are actually a trial study for the FAA. 3 years ago at my Indiana State Aviation Conference, I approached the FAA because they are very concerned with letting our grass get too long inside of the fence. And so thinking outside the box, being small town farm boy, I talked to the FAA and said, why do we have to mow this? Why can't we maybe look at mowing some hay? That had never been thought of before because most farmers don't like to mow hay when it's 14 or 15 inches tall. But we actually found a local farmer that was willing to do that because he's getting a deal out of it. He's getting some free farm ground to mow for hay, and we're getting to be a test site for the FAA to see if this is a viable project moving forward in a new funding mechanism for airports. Another big part is tax funding. We do receive funding, operational funding, and that is starting to get more and more stressed. We can run the day-to-day operations. It's these large capital projects that are putting some strains on our annual budget. As you guys will see, and you will hear, we're gonna go much more into here in the next couple minutes, the state maximum, if the airport authority would go through, is 3.9 cents per $100. And that is based on your county assessed value. So if we went to that maximum, what does that budget look like? That would give me, with fuel sales, with excise tax, circuit breakers, and you can read through the study that I emailed you, and you have copies there with you. My operating fund would be just shy of 3.2 million. A cumulative building fund would be about just over 290,000, and that is based off of a percentage of that airport operating fund. That would give the airport a total of about 3.475 million annually. We are not asking for that. We are asking to to take our budget up just a little bit, and we're coming in at little under what the half of what the maximum allowable by the state is. We would like to see a levy around that 3.25 million. To talk a little bit about how we make this up, I'm going to turn everything over to our airport attorney, Mr. Don Tribbett, to talk about how does the legal structure of the airport work, how is the board created, and what are some of the other Indiana codes that are specific to an airport authority.
Thank you, Nick. President Long, Council, my name is Don Tribbett. I'm an attorney. My office is in Logansport, but I do have a statewide aviation practice. I kind of fell into that. Long story, I won't go into that tonight, but I do represent a number of airports around the state of Indiana. I could talk a long time about airports. I've been asked to keep my comments as short as possible, so Mr. Wilkins knows probably I can talk a long time. So, but at any rate, I will try to keep it short. Airport authorities, as Nick alluded, are a creation of state statute. So you are controlled by state statute to a large extent what you can and what you cannot do. With regard to the actual establishment, that particular portion is not really complicated. It amounts to an adoption of a resolution, and that's the reason why I had prepared resolutions for both the city and the county that Nick, I think, sent to you previously. So you should have those. And upon the adoption of resolutions, there is a remonstrance period of 30 days. And if no remonstrance is filed, then the airport authority comes into existence either the July 1st or January 1st, whichever comes first after the county clerk certifies that no remonstrance has been filed. The goal here is, as I understand it, it's been explained to me, the goal is to have an airport authority, should both councils adopt resolutions, go into effect as of January 1 of 2024. So that would be the goal. Now, as everyone knows, we're talking about taxes a year behind, and you wouldn't be they wouldn't end up actually getting any tax levy money until 25. So that would be a situation where in the city's resolution, they did agree to maintain the funding level that they have had so far with regard to the airport until the airport's own tax levy would go into effect. As far as the makeup of the airport authority, I've never quite understood the rationale, but there are a number of different categories of whether you're established by a city, whether you're established by two cities, whether you're established by a city and a township, or whether you're established in this situation by a city and a county. And if you're established by a city and a county, it's a 6-member board. As I indicated earlier, there aren't any options to that. It's a 6-member board. And the 3 of those board members would be appointed by the city executive, the mayor. 3 of those board members would be appointed by the county executive, the county commissioners. And again, that's by statute. The board would adopt a budget. And again, the first one would be over a year from now that they would actually be going through the budget process. And I think one of the things that's important to point out to council is that both councils, if it's a city, county, airport authority, both the city council and the county council have authority to review and actually revise a budget. And I might just, without belaboring the point, it's not very long, so let me just read the statutory language there. It says, if an authority was established by another eligible entity, or, and this is the part that applies, or by 2 or more eligible entities acting jointly, its operating and maintenance budget and the tax levy to meet it is subject to review and modification by the same body that reviews and modifies the budget of each of those entities in the same manner as the budgets and tax levies of those entities, including reduction of any item of salary. So there is ultimate authority remaining within the elected officials to actually review and change the budget if that's deemed necessary. I do have a number of examples of situations that I have been involved in, and I won't go in some of my cutting here. I won't go into everything. But one of the situations that I think you might find somewhat interesting is I represent the airport in Greensburg, Indiana, which is, as you know, down towards Cincinnati off of 74. The Greensburg Airport has had a runway that I've often joked as a postage stamp runway, about 3,400 feet long and about 40 feet wide. That doesn't even come close to meeting FAA standards. So they have been working, long before I was hired by that airport, they were working on an expansion of the airport. During that time period, Honda, located in Greensburg, and you're probably all aware it's right off of 74 there, and I've had folks down there tell me that Honda would never have been there if 74 wasn't there, and yet when 74 came through, there was a lot of complaining that we don't need this interstate highway through here. But it came in, and Honda's there, and it's the largest employer now in Decatur County. Well, Honda made it known, but kind of behind the scenes, that they needed a larger, more adequate airport. And in fact, they had a couple of situations that I'm aware of where they actually ran out of parts. You know, everybody's on this just-in-time inventory system now, and they ended up running out of parts, and they were going to have to close down their assembly line unless they got parts, and they got them fast. So they had some parts flown in from Michigan, but they had to land because of the size of the aircraft. They had to land in Shelbyville, and then those parts had to be shipped then by truck to Greensburg, and the plant stayed open. And again, that's kind of the thing behind the scenes. Honda saying we need something more here, and so the airport was already embarking on this monumental task of considerably. They're actually realigning the runway and lengthening it to about 5,400 feet, which will allow some pretty decent-sized aircraft to land there. So it's a $20 million project, and they're in the midst of that. The expectation is to actually have a ribbon cutting yet this year, probably toward the end of the summer. Well, what I found interesting, and I'm never going to be able to absolutely stand before you or anybody else and verify this, but did you hear that about 2 weeks ago, Honda announced that it is making a major new expansion to its plant in Greensburg? And I don't remember how many, but there were thousands of jobs that were being created by this new facility that's going to go in there. And I have to think that there is it's more than coincidence that the timing just has that announcement just happens to be close to the time that the airport is getting ready to have a new longer and wider runway. So I think that's a good example. I've got others. I'm not going to belabor it. If you have questions, I'll be glad to try to answer any questions you have. Otherwise, I would conclude with a thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight.
And before I move on to the next slide, I'm going to curtail on what Don just shared, one of my favorite stories in my 10 years of being at the airport. There was an individual who was in a severe car accident in Denver, Colorado. They were taken to a local hospital, and while they were under surgery, spine surgery, in the OR, the orthopedic surgeon opened up a parts bag and was missing some of the parts from that implement. And the salesperson that represented one of our local biomedicals got on the phone and called back here to Warsaw and said, we don't have this part in our sterile bag, and we don't have any more in our distributorship, and we have somebody who's cut open on the table that needs this part. And that part showed up here at the airport about 30 minutes after that phone call was made. It was put on a jet and it was flown out. And because our airport was here, it delayed the entire surgery 14 minutes. Because they were able to fly that part out, and while they were working on other parts of this gentleman, they got the part to the hospital, and so by the time they got it in, it barely delayed the surgery at all. That's one of several stories. Obviously, that's a little bit one of the rare ones that, you know, bring you those warm and fuzzies, but that is the mission that is one of the missions that we support out at the airport. So with that, I would like to close my presentation and then open it up to the council for any questions that you may have. You can ask my wife and my parents. I will talk about the airport far longer than anybody in this room wants me to talk about it. So we'll play my favorite game, Stump the Airport Manager.
I just wanted to say thank you for giving us all the information ahead of time and for meeting with us.
You're welcome.
I guess I do have a question. Okay, with regard to the tax rate,
Yep.
are there limits to increasing the tax rate once it's established? Like if you don't establish it at the highest rate and then you need, what are the rules concerning either increasing it or decreasing it? Once
I'm
it's
going
set?
to refer to the attorney for that one.
That's a little bit out of my category. I'm tangentially involved in some of that, but generally, and I told Nick this earlier, I said generally, most financial advisors will recommend that you go to your maximum rate.
Could you
because
speak into the microphone a little clearer? I
Oh,
don't think
oh,
people-
sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
Most financial advisors will recommend that you go to the maximum rate right away because the DLGF, the Department of Local Government Finance, will allow you to go down, but they're pretty stringent about going up. So typically, it's recommended that you go to the maximum rate right away, but the board here, as I understand, has decided in order to keep the impact as small as possible to go to a lower rate to begin with. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Dave?
Yeah, of all the proposed projects, are the hangars and the terminal the only ones that are not 90-10? Or
Correct.
are they?
Yep. There is one fund available called the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law that is a supplement to the airport. All FAA grants that we receive are part of the Airport Improvement Program. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law was pushed through, I believe 2 years ago. And that grant has no limit for what the project is. So we could potentially receive funding for a terminal or hangars with that grant. We have applied 2 years in a row for funding with that. We have not been successful to this point, but we are competing with every single airport that is part of the federal program in the nation, and all airports compete equally. So it's more of a lottery system than anything. That's actually, the program before that was called the Supplemental Grant Program, and that was during Trump's presidency. And we were successful. We were one of the few general aviation airports in the nation to receive a grant through that program. Most airports that receive, I think Indian International received $22 million for their runway expansion that they are working on currently. We, to my knowledge, we're the only GA airport in the state that received funding through that supplemental grant, and that's how we're paying for the power line project. One second.
Can I just follow
go
up
ahead.
real quickly? Nick's correct in that. I mean, you want to use your money on your projects where the FAA is going to invest 90%. But once you get your airside projects done, there is a fund, a non-primary entitlement. Every airport in what's called the NIPIAS system, every airport in the NIPIAS system gets $150,000 a year. And that may have been adjusted due to inflation. I'm not sure the exact thing. But at any rate, you can use those funds from the non-primary entitlement for non-airside projects, like terminals or hangars. But if you do that, you lose your ability to get discretionary funds for 5 years. So 5 years. So you better not have any other projects in the queue if you're going to do that.
Okay. The other thing, you mentioned how the asphalt and everything is the reason that it hasn't been done in the past because you didn't have the money for the 10%, or?
No, the asphalt has been maintained so highly that we've not had to do any resurfacing. With our crack filling, sealing, we've not had to do a mill and fill. We are just to that point now where we are now needing to do it. Okay. So that's part of our capital improvement program, which our board approves every year in January. We have to submit that to the state, and then the NDOT Office of Aviation partners with the FAA. Currently, the state of Indiana, for general aviation airports like Warsaw, we're competing with 62 other airports in the state for $19.5 million. So all of those projects that I showed you are graded 0 to 100. 100 meaning you are definitely getting funding for this project. 0, yeah, it's technically eligible, you're not going to get it. Runways always score in the upper 90s. An airport our size are going to score higher than smaller airports just because of the user base that we have. We do compete better than most other airports in the state because of that. That is part of that CIP, and we are moving towards that project, or towards replacing all the rest of that asphalt. That $150,000 that Don was alluding to, we receive that every year. And as long as we continue to use that for airside improvements, our pavement, signs, lights, things that keep the airplanes in the air and safe, we can continue to compete for the additional discretionary funds, that $19.5 million pot. The other part of the NPE, the non-proprietary entitlement funds, that $150,000 can be rolled over up to 5 years. So if we had all of the pavement taken care of The runway lights were done, taxiway lights were done. We didn't have any projects with that. Now we can start going after snow equipment, or we could build a new row of T-hangers. And by using that money and building it up over 5 years with the state match and the federal match and the local match, we're looking at just shy of $900,000 that we can put towards a project once some of these other airside projects are done at the end of that 5 years.
Any other questions from the council? Okay, I guess we'll move on to the economic impact of the airport. And State Representative Snow is in the room. You're first up. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, President Long and members of the council. Good to see you all. And as well as all of you out here, I'm thankful you're here. Thanks for coming. And the biggest part of my job is to listen tonight and try to figure out what this is all about. I know quite a bit about it, but I'm still learning. So I met Nick, I think it was last summer or fall. And so I've learned a lot since then, trying to understand what an airport authority means. I went to South Bend and Fort Wayne and talked to the two gentlemen there that run their airport authority, asked a lot of questions. And then this past week, I found out we actually have statute, which is riveting stuff. Sorry, Mr. Attorney, but I started reading some of that. What I found out in talking with Dave, thankfully he still allows me to reach out to him and bug him, but some questions that he asked, what got me to look at the statute and trying to find out if there are questions you have after all of this, there are things we can change in statute to kind of help shape Kosciuszko County. When I first looked at all this, I assumed that the airport authority was a federal thing and then also a state thing, but within statute, there are other counties that have this, and they were able to mold statute to work for them the best way possible. So with that being said, I'm not going to go into all the detail. I'll leave it at that, but there's further conversation. Again, as I said, I'm really here to listen tonight. This is truly a local issue. It's a difficult decision for you all. The city's made theirs, of course, and I personally love economic development. Some of the work I've been able to do at the State House has afforded me to be in a lot of meetings around economic development. Being on the Ways and Means Committee has allowed me to be in those conversations with others. What I've been working on the last 2.5 years is trying to get money to our county and our towns and cities here in Kosciuszko. I'm not going to tell you that I've got all that accomplished, but I am hopeful. This upcoming budget has a lot of money that's going to IEDC, which is the Indiana Economic Development Corp., to the tune of $1.2 billion. Secretary of Commerce, Brad Chambers, and I have talked quite frequently, and I have asked him for a lot of specific projects that are getting done here. If we can get the money, we want to work on these things, and the airport is one of those. He has not given me any ink on paper, but a lot of head nods and things that make sense. The things that I've talked about in the governor's office and with Chambers is, I worked in the orthopedic industry for 20 years. I have a business here. I can't think of another county to belong to. And with that, I told them we have incredible bones here. We can grow here. There's a lot of counties. In fact, today we heard in Ways and Means, there's 65 counties that have population under 50,000. And of those 65, I think it was another 30 counties that are under 20,000 in population. Kosciuszko is one of the few counties that's grown this past cycle. And so I'm really proud of that. It's fun to go down there and talk to people. And when you ask where you're from, I say from Warsaw, Kosciuszko County, and the first thing they say is, oh, you do orthopedics up there. And, they know us. And so I'm really proud of that. And so, again, you guys have a difficult decision. I want you to know from my seat, I will do everything I can, whether it's for the city or for the county and surrounding town, to make this applicable, to make it work. I will not be, I talked to Ryan right before I came in here, and he said, you're dreaming if you think we can get statute changed this year. We do have a vehicle bill that I'm still hopeful, but I don't know that this decision will be made tonight, so that's why he said it probably won't happen. But it is a possibility, so it's nice at least knowing that part. Economic development, I see there's a lot of opportunities for projects to get done in this county that will help. And I look at decisions like this, and I know the fact of the matter is we're raising taxes. I get it. I'm also looking at this in a sense of it's an investment in our community. And one of the things that I've talked about down at the State House with Chambers and others is, if we invest in our county, they're more than willing to invest in us. But they've got to see that first step. Now, I'm not suggesting this is the only step, but that's what they're looking for in the communities they're going to invest in. But be that as it may, I'm going to fight hard and try to work on getting some things in this coming budget that will pass here in 3 weeks, and try to get this, moved across the finish line and see what we can get by way of dollars coming into the community. And a chunk of that would go for the airport. Been about the runway extension for most of it, but also some maintenance things that Nick has gotten me up to speed on in terms of needs that they have. So with that, I'd be glad to answer questions, but I want you to know I support, this project. I support your decision, and I will say I'll support it either way because I've told Mayor Joe I'm still going to try to get money and back when I started this whole thing, it was just a municipal airport, and so we were looking to get money to help them with that. So I'm rambling at this point. So with that, I'll answer any questions you may have and give it to the next speaker.
Does any council members have any questions, Representative Snow? Dave?
Yeah, Craig, I understand the state would like for us to get involved, to have something in the game. Do they care whether it's through an authority or any other way, or they simply want us to get some kind of investment into this thing?
I don't know that it has to be an airport authority. I don't know the answer to that. Like I said, after I talked to you a couple nights ago, I didn't know there was something else or anything else. Now, within the statute, there isn't anything that says you're something other than an airport authority. So to answer the question you asked is, can it just be county-owned? I assume it could, but that probably means you are purchasing it from the city. With the airport authority, the biggest component, as I understand it, is the federal money comes and gets involved in it in a lot of different projects. And that's a huge benefit. I did have lunch a couple of weeks ago with Senator Todd Young and gave him an update on what we're wanting to do in Kosciuszko County at the State House. And with his CHIPS and Science Act bill that he had passed, there's a lot of money with that, and he's more than willing to look at Kosciuszko County as let's just say, a recipient to some of that as well. And I told him about the airport as a project we wanted to get done.
Any other questions? Thank you, Representative
Thank you,
Snow.
sir.
Next on our list is Griffin Nate, District Director. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, President Long. I have a letter here from Congressman Rudy Yakum directed to members of the council. I am grateful for the hard work and dedication of community leaders like the Kosciuszko County County Council as it seeks to foster entrepreneurship and innovation in this area. As the orthopedic capital of the world, the economy of Warsaw and Kosciuszko County more broadly requires reliable and accessible transportation infrastructure. The Warsaw Municipal Airport serves as a critical cog in the orthopedic industry supply chains, from incoming inputs to outgoing life-saving devices on delivery. It also serves as a selling point for businesses looking to grow and create jobs in Kosciuszko County. The Warsaw Municipal Airport is a valuable resource in promoting economic development in our community. In Congress, I am proud to serve on the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, including as Vice Chairman of the Aviation Subcommittee. As Congress works on the reauthorization of the Federal Aviation Administration this year, I am focused on removing red tape and ensuring airports in our district, including Warsaw Municipal Airport, receive the support they require from the federal government. It is an honor to serve Indiana's 2nd District in Congress, and I look forward to continuing to work alongside all of you. Sincerely, Congressman Yakum. Thank you.
Thank you. I also see that we are been advised that we have David Abbott, another state representative in the room. Would you like to speak?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Craig had mentioned to me that and a couple people that they'd like to have me down here, and I was more than glad to be here. Recognize a lot of the faces at the table, so it's a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you.
As many of you may not know me, I represent District 18 as of the last redistricting. That's the two townships in northeast Kosciuszko, Turkey Creek and Tippecanoe that I represent. I'm here, I'm very, here, just like Craig said, I'm here to listen, to learn, and get up to speed for me personally, because, I'm just kind of getting into this right now. But, what I see is a great opportunity economically. I won't repeat the things that Craig talked about. That speaks for itself, and I agree 100% with what he's saying. The dollars and how those flow in here are going to be very important with, I think, local participation. And that's usually the way the grants are. They want some skin in the game. But what I see here with what we're doing with US 30 and the airport would be a critical companion to those initiatives to improve those. That's critical to keeping not only what we're doing now and getting it back up in the case of the airport, back up for infrastructure to current needs. We need to look forward because I can see great potential for Warsaw, not only in the medical community, but overall as a kind of a leader of the state. And just to drive that point home a little bit, I was picked out of Indiana to be a delegate representative with 5 other states. We went to London. We were invited by the British government. And we spent 5 days in intensive meetings with the British government. And one of the things that really came out in 3 different meetings was I was picked out of the other representatives from the other states as Indiana as their #1 pick that they want to do international trade with. They're having with Brexit and some of the troubles they're having with breaking away and still maintaining free trade. They're looking towards not just the United States, but the state of Indiana. And that's because the governor, Holcomb, wrote an MOU with Britain a few years back, which was to collaborate between the two countries. They emphasized to me in no short terms, they want to work directly with us. And I see an opportunity. We can be the leader here because we've already been recognized by another country, and with the governors and the state supporting that, and I'm working with Brad Chambers on this also. We're trying to get a delegation of women professionals from England to come over. They just got back from Dubai, and they want to come to Indiana. They want to see what we got, and I'd love to bring them right here and show them what Warsaw has. So my point, and I'll cut it off here, is that this airport, I think, will be critical, but I think we need to walk through this. We may have to step through it a little slower. I'm not sure, just getting into it, what the next steps are going to be. But I think it's something that people need to consider, what it costs and what you're going to get in return for the investment. And I think that's the key point we need to remember is going forward 10, 20 years in the future, what this is going to reap as benefits. So I see great things coming, and I'll leave it at that unless you have any questions.
Does council have any questions? No?
All right.
Thank
Tony?
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, next, we want to hear from industry representation, and I believe Zimmerman Biomet, Jim Lancaster's first up. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, County Council members. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening. As Mike said, my name is Jim Lancaster. I'm a proud and committed member of this community virtually my entire life, raising 3 now almost grown daughters here. I'm a proud member of Zimmer Biomet for the last 16 years, currently serving as the president of our global reconstruction business. I've spent my entire professional career in the orthopedic industry. I have the pleasure of working with an incredible team. We have an amazing community, both of which I continue to look for ways to support and grow. Tonight, wanted to bring our support in terms of the topic of the airport. Zimmer Biomet has an incredible presence in our community, not only as the largest employer, but also in various ways in which the company invests in and leverages the amenities Warsaw has to offer. One of them is our local airport. The Warsaw Airport has and will continue to be an invaluable aspect of our infrastructure at Zimmer Biomet. We live in a unique community that may be small, but has a mighty opportunity to continue to do great things. Zimmer Biomet is a gateway to our global development, and we recognize the importance of the long-term maintenance and vision needed for this local asset. As you may or may not know, we're approaching our Founders Day celebration of 96 years on May 2nd. We'll turn 100 years in 2027. Today's topic, in terms of collaboration, is the long-term maintenance and support of our local airport. There will be other topics we need to discuss in the future. No matter what those topics are, Zimmer Biomet is committed to look for ways to improve the quality of lives for our patients around the world. I'd like to say thank you for hearing from me tonight, and I look forward to working on ways to keep Warsaw, Kosciuszko County, sustainable, viable home for our global organization. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do any council members have any questions for Jim? Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming.
Next up, OrthoWorks. I was going to try your last name, but, you know.
Yeah, good luck with that. Good evening, President Long and fellow council members and in the audience. I've been in and out of this community several times, so I think many people know me around the table. President Long, I don't know you, but I've been in and out of this community I've lost count, but I think it's 5 times, largely with the orthopedic industry, and stepped back into a role representing OrthoWorks and ExcelLinks last summer. And so I'm happy to be here tonight, but I have to say I've prepared remarks, but as I get to go kind of late in the game, I'm just going to wing it. And one of the things that has really struck me in preparing for tonight is how do I really appeal to the council? But at the same time, when this meeting started, it was, which side are you on? And that's not the way that I would tend to think about this. I'd like to think about it as I'm a farm kid growing up, so ag means something to me, and we've got a great ag base here. We also have an orthopedic base that's been here for 125 years. Started back, as we all know, with Reverend Depew, and then it's built in around that. We also have a lot of other world's largest, whether it's Maple Leaf Farms with the duck production, whether it's the former R&R Donnelly print production, whether it's Explorer Van. But this community is blessed, immensely blessed. But I think it has to think about what does the future hold in store. And so that's what I would really encourage the council to think about is, not where is the puck today, but where's the puck going? And, you heard Jim talk about what it is that Zimmer Biomet thinks about. There are a lot of orthopedic companies that are clearly here already. There are a lot of other companies that want to come to this community. We're fortunate. We've got Mentor Media on their way to joining this community. MedArtis just bought Nextremity. There are a number of other companies that I know that are going to be created in the orthopedic scene. But in addition to that, we have an ag business here that also has technology that's coming into the market. And technology is going to lead to more things that are going to come into this community, and it's going to require air travel. It's going to require supply and logistics that are going to come in and out of this airport that are going to be critical to the future. So I don't profess to understand what Revra saw in this community 125 years ago, but I have a feeling it was probably transportation related. The railroads ran through here. Well, we've moved on. We use railroads still, but as we all know, air travel is important. We've heard stories about how important it is to get product in and out of here, whether that's the orthopedic side of things or whether it's running Louis Dreyfus that we heard tonight as well. So I would just appeal to the council that this is the way I think about it. If Dane Miller was still alive and still here, he'd find a way to convince people that this is the right thing to do. When I took my job last summer, Mayor Joe was in there, Susie Light was in there, and they will remember one of the things that I said that I was committed to do was to try and lead like Dane would lead. And I'm just going to leave you with the thought that Dane's looking down at us, and he's saying, do the right thing in this community, and let's create yet even a better place than we already have. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we're at speakers for the city. I believe, Jay, you're first up.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. My name's Jay Rigdon. I have been on the Board of Aviation Commissioners for a few terms now. I've been fortunate enough to serve as president of the board for the last several years. And I want you to know, as council members considering this, that during that time, we have worked very hard to make sure that the airport is an economic asset for the community. And you notice I didn't say not just for the city of Warsaw, but for the entire community, which includes all of Kosciuszko County. You know that Warsaw and Kosciuszko County compete with many other larger communities for job retention and business growth. Because of that, we have to maintain every advantage that we have. You saw the economic numbers that Nick showed for you earlier in terms of the economic impact of the Warsaw Airport. I have no doubt that one of these advantages that we have is this airport, and that those economic advantages, exclusive of those airports that have regularly scheduled airline service coming in, I would stack our airport up against any in the state. But to maintain this advantage and to provide quality and safe service, we know this has to change. We've got to do a little bit more. We should have a city-county airport authority managed by the city and county, because the changes we need in the long term for the airport should come from all who benefit from the airport. Now, most of the support that we get, and I suspect we will continue to get, actually comes from the customers of the airport. Most of our budget is paid for by now by fuel sales, which is paid for by those who will fly in and out of the airport, or by user fees, which are generated on our airport as well as airports nationwide. But we do think that some of the support should come from the general population benefiting from the economic opportunities and advantages the airport provides. People throughout the county can and should support this airport by changing to an authority, and they will also at that point gain a voice in the airport's future operations and growth. We that are on the Warsaw Board of Aviation Commissioners enthusiastically endorse and support this proposal.
Any questions for Jay? Nope. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, Kedco Allen, represented by Susie Light. Good evening, Susie.
Golly, guys. I'm Susie Light. Oh, thank you very much. I'm Susie Light, representing KEDCO, Kosciuszko Economic Development Corporation. KEDCO understands the airport is a critical economic component of our county. We know there are many aligned efforts between the city of Warsaw and the county to help advance our community. Important projects with broad community impact. Housing is one example, and the City-County Airport Authority could be another. Nick shared some amazing statistics about the airport, illustrating exactly how important it is to our community. I urge you to listen well and be part of the efforts to continue to grow our vibrant community. Quality of life is a key economic driver. City-County Airport Authority is an example of creating a means to invest in an airport that meets our growing economic needs, those of a thriving community, and it is important to do so. If we do not invest in our economic growth, in a few years, we will see the opposite of a thriving community. We will see a dying community. Taking off my KEDCO hat and putting on my personal hat, my husband Steve and I live in Kosciuszko County in Wayne Township. Our family business owns property in Warsaw and Winona Lake. We are conservative and we are frugal. Anybody that knows Steve, we're frugal. But for us to say, don't tax us because we don't use the airport, is foolish. Not all residents of Wayne Township, not all residents of Wayne Township go to the Wayne Township Warsaw Public Library. And not all residents of Wayne Township have children in school. But we support those things with our tax dollars because we benefit as a community from those important, valuable things that create valuable community citizens. Those important businesses that use the airport are valuable community businesses. I want our community to be vibrant and thrive because I want it to be a place that my grandchildren want to come back to and live in and call home. I want our joint legacy to be that we invested in the future. Please support creating the City-County Airport Authority. Thank you.
Any question? Thank you, Susie. Okay, next up, Rob Parker, President of the Kosciuszko Chamber of Commerce. Good evening, Rob.
Good evening, President Long. Good evening, council members. As you said, I'm Rob Parker with the Kosciuszko Chamber of Commerce. And at the Chamber, our mission is really, it's to stimulate healthy and diverse business growth in our community. And one of the ways we do that is by encouraging investment in infrastructure. And as Susie eloquently just said, that investment is for our future. It's for our kids. It's for growth in our community. Without growth, we die. Without growth, we slow. It makes it harder for us to attract new businesses. So I want to talk a little bit about the airport itself, some of the stats that I've gathered. We have about 35 flights coming every day to the airport. About half of those, a little over half, are the orthopedics, which, as you all know, is a huge economic driver, and those flights are critically important to their success and continued growth in our community. But I want to talk a little bit about the others flights that come in that are more personal in nature. So 15, 17 flights every day come into our community. Many of those who are flying planes obviously are high wealth individuals who have the opportunity to make significant investments into our community. It's those individuals that can continue to come in to invest in our community that can add additional jobs, kind of like what Bob Vito said, is the orthopedics are still looking to grow. They're still looking to come in, and those individuals fly in, and they will judge our community. They will see what we have at the airport. And sometimes first impressions are very important, and we want to make sure we put our best foot forward. So with the Kosciuszko Chamber of Commerce, I just want to make sure you understand we support local businesses, we support growth, and we support moving forward with the airport to make it the best infrastructure for those coming into our community that we possibly can. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Okay, next up is Dan Robinson, Board of Aviation Commissioners. Good evening, Dan.
Good evening, council. Thank you for your time, residents. I'm a member of the Board of Aviation Commissioners here, and I want to freely say I am strongly in favor of converting to an airport authority. I have many reasons for that. I've been a part of the local airport since the 60s, quite honestly. I have seen in my career, in our family business, the connection that many individuals and businesses countywide have had with the aviation and how important it's been over the last, what I personally have witnessed, over 50 years. I think it's extremely important for our future, a part of our infrastructure, and I, like some of the others said, I feel like the whole county benefits, and I do realize that a lot of residents don't recognize that benefit. I do understand that, but it's still there, indirectly a lot of times. So I think it's very important that we do this because honestly, it gives a better tax base for the budget so that we can do the proper maintenance. Nick talked about FAA funding grants. I've heard rumors that, oh, if we don't do this, we won't get the grants. That's not true either. But it does affect it because of the matches, and most of the grants have a local match component. If we can't do our match, the grant goes to somebody else. So it is important. And then again, like I said, the FAA prioritizes their grants because everybody in the country's after the money. So there's certain things that there's just not enough money to fund that need to be done. And we need the capital budget to do it, to keep our airport strong. I think it's extremely important that we do that. And I've heard some people say, well, you personally benefit. Yes, I freely admit I personally benefit. Our family business has worked with many, many orthopedic businesses and some of the local farmers in this county for decades. So all the way around, I benefit. And I admit that. But again, we all benefit. We benefit through the wider tax base. Gentleman before me just alluded to private flights, Mr. Parker coming in. A lot of people that have second homes on Tempe and Wawasee Lake fly in here. Now, their property taxes are not helping to support the airport, but they use it. And like you said, I know of businesses that have located here because the owner had a second home on one of our lakes and liked it so much he wanted to live here and moved his business here. I've been able to witness that. So I know how important the airport is to our entire county. And I've seen many, many businesses and even some of the local farm businesses that have used the airport for business and pleasure over those last 50 years. So I just want to say, reiterate, I think it's extremely important for our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Okay, on the next portion now, we're looking for basically public speaking, and we have a list here of names. I want to remind everyone you're going to have a 2-minute limit, and Kathy will be the timekeeper, and at 30 seconds, she will hold a sign up, and she will promptly cut you off at 2 minutes. What's that?
Make sure they say their name. Call their name and make sure they say their name.
Thank you, ladies. Please step up to the microphone and state your name clearly for the record before you speak. First up is Jeremy Morrison.
Hello, Council. Thank you. My name is Jeremy Morrison. I own a small business out at the airport, Morrison Aviation Services. So I'm directly involved out there. One example I would like to throw out there is there's like Coletta Air. They come in because it's more economical to land an airplane here and have a courier pick up cargo from here and ship it to Fort Wayne via truck than it is to land an airplane over there and pay all the other fees. So the structure of this airport is super important for other counties and GM. I mean, so what I'm specifically talking about is that these parts that I'm talking about went to the GM plant in Fort Wayne. I employ 2 full-time mechanics aside from me. So we're a small business at the airport. We're family owned. Me and my wife and my son run it. And my taxiway just happens to be the red taxiway on that. So I guess I'm a little biased on maybe getting some money to help upgrade the airport a little bit. And, that taxiway right there, there's just so many, there's a Lear and, there's just so many airplanes that operate on these taxiways and the infrastructure there just definitely needs, your guys' support. And I've heard the representatives talk about, if you guys kick in, then the federal money kicks in a little more. And I mean, it's not just a tax increase. It's like all these other community members have said, it's an investment into our community. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Jeremy. Okay. I believe next up is
Gary Parker, or Carrie Parker?
Gary Parker?
Gary Parker. I've lived in Warsaw city limits for 40 years, and I've been a neighbor of the airport for a while now. but I'm not going to go into pros and cons, but there's something very exciting that's coming to Warsaw in January. We're going to have a new mayor. And I think we've got a mayor coming in that's got a lot of experience, very good with people, and has a lot of leadership in this community for over 40 years. I think the council and the taxpayers should think about it this way, is maybe we put this on hold with you guys and give the new mayor a couple years and see what he can do with the airport. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you very much.
Next up is Terry Martin. You're cutting into your 2 minutes, by the way.
No, Terry Martin, I'm a resident of the county there and in Ms. Cates' district, so I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I appreciate the council opening the session up today. So I will jump right into it. A couple things I've noticed in the whole process and presentation. The airport budget's about 1.2 million, and they have an expected shortfall currently of about 133,000. So the current airport, the way they operate, is not a profitable situation, and they obviously need more funding. And I will say if you look at the 2012 impact statement that they presented, and it shows that the airport's like fifth, I would advise the council to thoroughly study that impact, and you'll understand that with 14 employees, and with Fort Wayne having 873 employees, we don't generate near the same economic impact, which is what they're showing. And if you look at other airports that are similar in size, with the number of employees and that economic impact, we should be in that $10-20 million range, not $860 million. So if you look at the numbers, it's all based on, they sent out 69 questionnaires to airports, 69 airports questionnaires, fill out how many employees you got and what your direct impact is, economic impact is on the industry. And I think some people, depending on how they submitted their forms, your direct impact is what the airport directly impacts on the business. If you build a product, the airport may not have any impact on that. You know, they may not have brought any materials in. They may not have shipped anything out. So how you control or how you justify economic impact is a real fuzzy game. So to say we're fifth on that airport list is obviously, if you look at that, not true. She's cut me off already. And I would say, so I think they should really look at that. I think if you look at the Baker Tilly financial, where they came up with the 3.9%, that is based on current property evaluations, which is the highest it's been, and who can think around here? Everybody gets their tax statement, everybody's not gonna like it, right? So you take the highest thing and do the reverse math to get your $3 million budget, and you get that 3.9. What happens if evaluations go down and things of that nature? Those numbers may not be true. So you're taking numbers at the highest percentages they could be and calculating off of that. So I think there needs to be more data and facts to be discussed. These are my quick points. I prefer this goes to a public vote. I think the input from the county residents should have more impact. I think something of this nature should have, I appreciate the speakers and the representation, but it should have more personal of the vote. And I think it's just the best use of money. You know, there's a lot of projects that I'm sure you guys are all aware of that between the schools and highways and other projects, is this the best use of the money? Could that money and these grants be used on things that have, things that have more impact on the community? So,
Thank you, Terry.
yeah, thank you, guys.
thank you,
I
Terry.
did let you go over.
And
I let you go over.
Oh, you did? Oh, you're trying to justify.
And thank you for your questions, Terry.
Mike.
Yeah.
Could I ask the attorney a question based on what his thing was? So if, in order to get it to a referendum, what has to happen?
You have to have a petition signed by the same number of voters that would be required to get someone on the ballot.
Based on the Secretary of State's?
Yeah, a petition of nomination must be signed. This is what is to get someone on the ballot. A petition of nomination must be signed by the number of voters equal to 2% of the total vote cast at the last election for Secretary of State.
Isn't that about 456? That would be 456.
Yes.
I've done the research with the clerk, but there's another part to it. In order to get it to a referendum status, am I not correct, that the council must approve it and that then starts the referendum
Yes,
process.
right. Yes,
That's what I
exactly.
wanted you to
Yeah,
clarify.
right. I'm sorry, I didn't understand
you.
the questions.
Thank you.
Can I ask you another quick question? So there's no other way to do this, to get it to a referendum, other than us approve it and then it
I'm not
goes-
aware of any other way. I've never seen any other way.
Okay, because I've had people ask us if
Yeah.
we could just skip this and go right to referendum.
Right.
But we can't.
Yeah. No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Don Zolman. Good evening, Don.
Good evening. Thank you, Mike, and the rest of the council members. And did my time start?
No, I haven't started it yet.
Oh, okay. First of all, I want to thank you for the work that you do and having this meeting tonight to help inform people. I really think we should go to a referendum on this. When I look, you have a good turnout here tonight, but there's 80,000 people that live in Kosciuszko County. I mean, not all of those folks vote, but I think, you know, if Mike hadn't brought the question up and it hadn't come out in the paper, I wouldn't have been as informed as I am now about what's going on. I'm not against progress in the community and development. Some people refer to me as the John Dutton of Wayne Township, which I'm not really for just developing every piece of land that's out there, and I think we should have orderly development. 35 years ago, I worked on a project here in the county to develop a plan for orderly development called LESA, Land Evaluation Site Assessment, which used a numerical system to decide what properties are developed. And after about 3 years of use, it was put on the shelf because some people thought it was too restrictive. And so we end up with sort of a hodgepodge of development around this community that ends up costing us some more money in other ways, in infrastructure, and now with what we're going to have to do with US 30. We have to be careful we don't do the same thing with the airport. And we do have a fantastic industrial base. We have a fantastic agricultural community here as well. We need to work to protect both. And sometimes we need to look at, you know, who's being charged for the benefits and how that's being done. And again, I can see a lot of pluses for improving the airport, but I think the people promoting this need to sell us. Sell me on what you're wanting to do. When I do a project, I don't come to the county to pay for it. But I'm willing to help, but just don't ask me to do it all. So thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you, Don.
Thanks,
Thank
Don,
you.
so much.
That's just sometime.
Next up is Mike Klonderis. Good evening, Mike.
Good evening, council. Thank you for having this meeting here tonight. My name is Mike Klonderis. I'm an elected member of the Warsaw City Common Council and the Vice President of the Warsaw Redevelopment Commission. Warsaw City officials have been working diligently for years to attract new business and industry while trying to make it economically attractive to retain our legacy businesses. Our accomplishments are many. You need look no further than Warsaw Technology Park. Those new businesses, as well as our legacy industries, contribute immensely to the economic vitality of the whole community. But they require infrastructure, and that is what we strive to provide. It has taken years of foresight and hard work. We continue to push forward under the leadership of the mayor and the guidance of the city council. We believe that infrastructure development is critical to future growth and economic expansion, resulting in the greater good for the entire community. The new airport authority is vital to that infrastructure solution. It's the linchpin to the future for every industry in the county. As you know, we elected officials have the honor and the privilege of serving our great community. Sometimes that is confusing, underappreciated, and thankless. We are sometimes tasked with making difficult decisions. The city has made its decision. After having invested millions of dollars in the city airport over 75 years, and its willingness to leave nearly $15 million of infrastructure and equipment in the hands of a new airport authority, the city is willing to give up those assets and ownership because we're convinced that this is the time to seize the opportunity and create the new airport authority. In closing, I'd like to ask you to look to the future, and I'd like you to seize the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Next on the list, Lee Harmon. Good evening, Lee.
Good evening. Thank you. Lee Harmon, I'm a resident of Warsaw here, and I also own small farm property passed down to me from my parents. The farm that I grew up on, driving tractors, taking care of cows. Tractors have changed, cows not so much. But I understand, I think, the ag community, and I understand, that not only are they an integral part of the community, but they also have a vested interest in the financial aspect of this. I understand that. I'm compelled to speak because I care about this community. I've never wanted to live anyplace else. Lived here my entire life. I see this, to me, as a slam dunk. We ought to have this airport expansion. Back in the 70s, there was a singer-songwriter named Joni Mitchell, and she wrote and sang a song that had a refrain in it that goes, "Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you got till it's gone?" I can tell you from personal experience, having recently suffered a loss, that is absolutely true. And I would add another word in that refrain. You don't know what you've got until it's really gone. I haven't heard much about, I've heard about expansion and growth, which is absolutely true. I'd ask you to think about retention of the assets that we have and how important this airport is to retaining those assets that feed how many families? Think about the economic impact if this does not happen as it's been laid out here. I understand it's going to cost money, but there is such a thing as the common good. And it seems like here, oftentimes we lose sight of that. Yes, it's going to cost me more money. I don't care. I want to think about the kids in this community that need to have hope. And I would ask that you make a decision so that when time comes, that refrain does not turn into, we didn't really know what we had until it was gone. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Okay, next on the list is Kathy Lemberg. Good evening.
Hi, thank you. I am really out of my element here. But I want to tell you, I live in the Turkey Creek Township. So I'm in northern Kosciuszko, and had I not opened up my Warsaw paper, I would not have known about this. And if it doesn't get in the Mail Journal, we don't know what's happening. So I'm kind of the airport is so important, and I think we all agree on that. If we don't do this, it's not going to go away. It will still be here. They'll just figure out another way to fund it. But I also think maybe the referendum is the way to go. I think you have to think about the economic impact on all the residents of Kosciuszko that will all be paying for this through their property taxes. And you can't just think of a few in a few area. And yeah, the Wawasee, Winona, Tippy, I know it generates a heck of a lot of money for this county. And so a lot of that is going to be affected by whatever you decide. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy.
Okay, next sheet. Craig Charlton.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity.
Good evening, Craig.
Plain Township trustee. I have heard much about this from people that are concerned about their taxes, where they're going and what's going to happen with them. We've heard great statements from our industry in supporting and the money and financial that the airport has on them. But yet we want to tax the people to pay for their wealth. I think user fees are higher for them, should be, and put this on the referendum and let the people decide. We increase the user fees, they'll pay for it. The money's there. We don't need to tax people. Let the industry that use it pay for it, not the people. Thank you for your time.
Thank you,
very
Craig.
much.
And I believe the last one on our list is Carl Sowers. Sold. Okay. We're done for the evening then. That's the last on the list. Unless anyone in the council has any more questions of the presenters tonight from the city of Worcester. No?
I don't
Okay.
have any questions of anybody, but I do want to thank you all for being here. It's great to see a full room of concerned people of what's going on. You're just as concerned about this move as we are. We've had a lot of conversations about it. I even shared with Sue Ann last night at the fish fry. I've lost a lot of sleep over this so far. And I'll continue to lose a lot of sleep until it's settled. But it's really great to see a nice turnout. And thank you all for being here and making it very civil.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening.
Oh, no problem. Good to meet you. Yeah, good to meet you. Next grade.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You live in the house I wanted to buy, but it was
Oh,
never
yeah?
for sale. Yeah.
Oh,
You've
right.
done an awesome job.
Oh, thank you.
She left quite a
Is she that quiet at home?
Give me a little break. That doesn't happen. Who's that lady?
Where everybody else is there in mine.
Got it.
Yeah, he's got
Where to get it on? I didn't think about it either. I didn't.